In a recent editorial, WOR-TV recommended that the United States expand its coastal fishing limit from 12 to 200 miles. Here with another point of view is attorney Lorraine Telecki, a wetlands and marine consultant.
Channel 9 has suggested that the United States follow the unilateral actions of a number of other nations and increase its territorial boundaries to 200 miles at sea. Cited are numerous incidents threatening U.S. fishermen and the fishing industry itself from foreign fishermen coming within 12 miles of our shores. On face value, this may seem to be the thing to do, to protect ourselves, but it was such irresponsible actions from other nations that have caused these problems to arise in the first place. In defiance of accepted and traditional international regulations, certain nations have gained an undisputed advantage over others. Yet what may at first seem to be a solution may actually be more of a hindrance. Rather than join the bandwagon, the United States should use its prestige to urge all nations possessing an ocean coastline to join in an international conference designed to establish a formal treaty creating a standard territorial limit equitable to all, instead of taking unilateral action that too often has been enforced by gunboat belligerents. As a nation governed by laws, we should be prime movers in seeking such solutions on a worldwide basis. By simply following the crowd, we push ourselves and others to the brink of potential global conflict over the subject of fishing rights, a subject that can and should be resolved by sane and sensible people in a sane and sensible manner. Unless all nations to learn to act by law rather than react by emotion, the future of the world is indeed in doubt.
This has been a reply to a WOR-TV editorial. We welcome comments on our editorial opinions and will consider requests by responsible spokesmen for time on the station to express contrasting views. This is WOR-TV, New York. Good morning from Channel 9 News. This is Bob Jordan with the latest news, sports, and weather. 26 degrees, partly cloudy skies, a Wednesday morning, February 4th, 1976. Clear, not as cold overnight, lows in the 20s, partly sunny, milder today, Wednesday, with highs in the low 40s. In world news this morning, Secretary of State Kissinger says the United States has no desire to be the world's policeman, but Kissinger said the U.S. also doesn't want Russia to take over the role. Speaking in San Francisco, Kissinger blasted Russian and Cuban intervention in Angola. He said the intervention is of urgent concern for the United States and says it will be met by active diplomatic maneuvers. Kissinger's comments are seen as a major policy pronouncement, outlining a more vigorous stand by Washington against Soviet foreign policy. And Kissinger promises that the United States will not remain indifferent to what he calls the dispatch of expeditionary forces and vast supplies of arms to impose minority governments. The question of U.S. involvement in Angola came up before the Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee on Africa. During the hearings, a deputy defense secretary said the Pentagon has not hired or trained any mercenaries for Angola. Robert Ellsworth also said there are no U.S. military or contract personnel stationed in Angola. African leaders are also taking a look at the Angolan situation. 5 of them have decided to meet in the Zambian capital of Lusaka this weekend to see if they can find a way to get the 3 warring factions to form a joint government. There have been 10 previous attempts by African leaders to bring peace to Angola. All 10 have failed. Arizona Republican Barry Goldwater accused some of his colleagues on the Senate Intelligence Committee of being partisan in laying blame for foreign assassination plots. Goldwater says there is a great deal of evidence indicating the late President John Kennedy was personally involved in schemes to bump off Cuba's Fidel Castro. But Goldwater says the panel spent 9 of the probe's 10 months trying to delete the Kennedy link from the committee report. Many congressional Republicans were unhappy with the committee's report, which said no direct connections can be made to Democratic Presidents Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. But the report says evidence suggests that Republican President Dwight Eisenhower authorized a CIA attempt to murder the late Congolese Premier Patrice Lumumba. Both the American and Soviet embassies in Bonn protested published reports identifying members of both nations' diplomatic staffs as secret agents. The U.S. Embassy spokesman called the publication of a list of alleged CIA members in West Germany irresponsible, contemptible, and inflammatory. The Soviet spokesman says it is merely an attempt by people who wish to undermine relations between the two countries. Our time now at Channel 9 News, 27.5 past 2 o'clock. A panel of 36 people was tentatively approved for the bank robbery trial of newspaper heiress Patricia Hearst. The final jury of 12 regulars and 4 alternates is expected to be chosen this morning after the prosecution and defense exercise peremptory challenges. Earlier in the day, defense attorney F. Lee Bailey sprang 2 surprise motions. Bailey requested bank robbery charges against his client be dismissed and asked that evidence about Miss Hearst's activities during 19 months following her kidnapping be thrown out. The grounds upon which Bailey based his appeals are under a news blackout. Judge Oliver Carter did agree to one defense motion to have Miss Hearst taken to a doctor for x-rays of her head, face, and skull. Bailey apparently wants to show the newspaper heiress had been so badly beaten by her captors 2 years ago that physical damage is still visible. Democratic National Chairman Robert Strauss has called on Congress to settle the future of the Federal Election Commission and its duties as soon as possible. A recent Supreme Court ruling blocks most of the FEC's authority after March 1st, including the Commission's rulemaking and money dispersing power. Strauss says immediate action is required to keep the campaign process moving. He says it does not matter to him if lawmakers abolish and replace the commission or revamp it to conform with the court ruling. The abortion issue has become part of the 1976 presidential campaign. President Ford told a broadcast interview he does not back the Supreme Court's 1973 decision on abortion, but instead favors allowing the individual states power to enact their own abortion regulations. Ford says abortion on demand should not be allowed. He says he would favor abortion only in rape or other unfortunate cases. Alabama Governor Wallace was given permission by his doctors to continue campaigning for the presidency despite having suffered an injury Monday. Wallace sustained a knee injury when aides dropped his wheelchair in Florida. An orthopedic surgeon diagnosed the trouble as probably a torn ligament of his right knee. Meantime, the Federal Election Commission reports that Wallace is running well ahead of his Democratic rivals in raising money. Reports show Wallace has raised nearly $6 million. Senator Henry Jackson, $3 1/3 million. Senator Lloyd Benson, $2 million. Supporters of an end to federal price controls for natural gas won an initial victory in the House. They voted 230 to 184 in support of a resolution allowing the deregulation issue to be attached to an emergency bill covering winter emergency sales of natural gas. The vote came on the argument that there will be plenty of natural gas in the country if the price is right. The emergency bill comes up for a possible vote today. The natural gas issue also came up for debate in Texas when that state's agriculture commissioner said farmers may not be able to produce food for the nation unless there is a drop soon in natural gas prices, preventing many Texas farmers from properly irrigating their crops. Veteran Senate farm leaders are marshaling their strength for a scheduled vote today to override President Ford's veto of increased federal milk prices. Aides say they have the votes to override the veto. Current price supports are 80% of what is called parity. A successful veto override would force the administration into raising those supports to 85%, something Agriculture Secretary Butts says would cost taxpayers $530 million over 2 years. There were more hearings on Capitol Hill on the health care issue. HEW Secretary David Matthews appeared before a House subcommittee as it looked into rival health care plans. Matthews told the congressman that health care costs are increasing faster than any other single category of American consumer spending. Partly cloudy skies, 26 degrees. Clear, not as cold overnight. Partly sunny and milder. Today, Wednesday, highs should be in the 40s. In local news this morning from the police blotter, police and the city medical examiner's office